we were pumping them full of vaccines and whatnot all the time. I mean, conception rates went down, reproduction rates went way down. Felt like the cattle life expectancy went way down.
That's a term that's getting thrown around a lot right now. Regenerative farming, regenerative grazing. What is it? What does it mean? And how does it look from your perspective?
Well, there's different grades. We've gone completely regenerative, which means we don't use any fertilizers. We don't use any pesticides. Basically, it's the way the natural ecosystem should work. The cattle eat the grass, fertilize the grass. That sort of supports the ecosystem.
So there's no need for real tractors at all in the process?
No. We get flack because most ranches, they want their pastures to look like golf courses.
If you look at the ranch in a whole, it's several different ecosystems and different terrains. Topography's different. We got bottomland, we got hilltops, ravines, all different sets of systems there. If you look at what I guess the Blackland Prairie does when it dries out, it's going to be nothing but ripples and divots and holes. And what does that tell you? It tells you that the ground is thirsty. So if everything was level and flat, just like concrete, it would all drain off a lot easier. With all the little depressions and different terrain features, you have areas that will hold water and will recharge the system a lot better than you would if it was just flat. If there was, just say you got a lot of rain in a short amount of time, well, some of that would get held up in those little divots and it would give it time to recharge instead of just running off to the next water system or to the creek or whatever. So basically it's making its own terraces. Mankind's been putting in terraces for a while in farming, but the ground has its own way of doing that. And so you kind of have to allow it to happen.
I mean, is that kind of a criteria for being regenerative is having multiple species?
It's actually a benefit. So once we started to go regenerative, and people throw these words around and they become almost meaningless. But once we've gone back to the pure natural ecosystem, we found that more animals are coming in. The bees start coming back. The birds start coming back.
On the operational side, we've done a couple of different programs. We're working through the Noble Research Institute, I believe, out of Oklahoma there with some pilot programs on raising some beef steers and whatnot. And it just kind of seemed like we're pumping them full of vaccines and whatnot all the time. I mean, you're doing modified live vaccines, and for some of the calves to be able to handle that modified live vaccine, you had to give the cow the same one 30 days before the calf was in utero or conceived. So it just kind of seemed like we were just constantly poking them up, with something or shooting them up with something, and caused a lot of stress on the cattle. Conception rates went down, reproduction rates went way down. I think one year we were down, close to 60% reproduction, or conception rates went down 60%. And then we had to start a whole new program as far as a calving, because we were strictly just a spring calving operation. Well, we couldn't sell 60% of the herd the next day and then figure out how we're going to replace that or what we were going to do in that short amount of time to get the numbers back up. The other thing that we found out was it felt like the cattle, or the grown cows, the mama cows, life expectancy went way down. I mean, you may have one that they start calving at 2 to 3 years of age. Well, by the time they reach 7 years of age, they were done. They went free martin, or they just wouldn't reproduce, or whatever the cause might be. And we just kind of starting adding everything up and what it was costing us to put those vaccines in those cows, plus the low amount of return we would get from those cattle. That was one of the catalysts that drove that change as well. It was like, okay, we basically decided to put the ranch into a reset mode and let's get rid of all the vaccines. We had to wean them off slow. We just didn't one day decide not to do anything. Of course, you only vaccinate once or twice a year anyhow. We just slowly weaned those cattle off those vaccines. And first was the modified live, and then it was some of the other stuff like most common blackleg, which is your most common, your cheapest vaccine out there. And then once we did that, we got off conventional wormers. It wasn't just an automatic light switch of changing over. So basically what I was talking about, we just kind of put the ranch in a reset mode. I believe the cattle are stronger. We were able to wean them off of all the cattle cubes that we were giving them, during the winter time. And I guess the cost of time went down quite a bit just by not having to give them all those cubes during the winter that they became dependent on. Once we stockpiled, standing grass, we were able to cut back our hay feeding. We actually were able to increase the herd size, but we were able to decrease the hay input.
The number of rolls we fed.
I mean, we were feeding
600 or something.
Yeah, it could be anywhere 600 to 800 rolls of hay per year. Now we only feed about 230, and we probably increased the herd size by about 50%. So, just those numbers alone increase your margins.
Are you able to do that because of the climate in Texas? Because most farms can't do that year round,
This year's going to be tough. We've actually been through about 3 to 4 years now of extreme weather cases. And it seems like the last few years we get all of our rain just in about a 60-day window, and then we get nothing for the rest of the year. Hay production was a little bit lower this year. We don't have as much standing grass, but you have to listen to your cattle as well. We're having a lot of our fall calves being born right now. And, those mama cows aren't slowing down. So that tells me everything eventually will be okay. There'll be enough to support them. And we just kind of listen to the cattle. And there's grass here and there. It's not much to it, enough to survive on, but you can walk through the dirt and it's pretty much turned to powder. We haven't had any substantial rainfall. It was flooding back in June, or not June, but I guess May. Yeah. In the June, the water cut off, and we've been sitting here pretty much moisture free since then. So what is that, 5 to 6 months already?
Yeah. Wow.
August, September, October, we're 5 months, and we've gone to 100, 105 degree weather for 30 days or better. That's what we're dealing with.
We're set up, since it's just been cattle on the property, that when it does rain, everything's fertilized. Everything's ready to go. We just need water.
It doesn't take long.
And it'll pop right back. So a couple of good days of rain, you get a few inches, 2 inches here, maybe for a couple of weeks, everything's green again. Mm-hmm. It responds. And that's another thing, is that it bounces back pretty fast.
And so what was that period of from conventional to regenerative? Was that a 3 or 5 year period? Like how long did it take?
Still going.
Yeah.
It's still going. Okay.
What level do you want to look at it? You think, I just done this. Now I'm regenerative because I'm rotational grazing, right?
That's step one. Yeah.
Step one. Then you take it to step 2. And then how are you controlling erosion in this area? Or it's probably endless. So it's basically a constant learning curve. From what we figured out, or what I understand about it, we're always trying to figure out a way to improve. A lot of times you see programs where people are condensing a lot of cattle down into one small section, maybe putting 50 cows on 2 acres or whatever, and then they just move them every day. That's okay if it works for them. That style doesn't exactly work here. It does do wonders for the grass, because as soon as you get rain, it might be 3 foot tall, just within a few weeks. You do really condense that manure, the urine. I guess you create EMF as well by running on cattle on top of it. It creates its own frequency, which I've understood and heard about people talking about how just running cattle on top of it, like as a migrating herd, actually the frequencies help grow that grass. It gets it stirred up. It wakes it up and says, hey, I got to go again. So, at what level are you regenerating? And I think as technology changes, people start learning more and they start seeing the results of what they've been doing for 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years. There's always going to be that next level of, how can I improve it? What can I do better? Your water source may be in one corner of that pasture. The next step to that regenerative is to move that water source to the other corner. And so instead of having all your heavy traffic flow to one corner, now you've got it, your EMF traffic and your grazing patterns different. So at what point do you quit?
If you enjoyed the clip from the podcast, make sure to check out the next video up here, or head over to watch the full episode down here. And before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Come on. Yeah, thanks for watching.